In this lesson, we will use the Hydra utility to assess organizational security. We are in the password crackers portion of the video series. This lesson is part of a video series that prepares you for the hands-on portion of the CompTIA Security Plus exam and is designed to give you hands-on experience with the exam. So what is Hydra? The Hydra command is a fast, parallel password cracking tool used for brute force attacks. It is used by cybersecurity professionals, penetration testers, and ethical hackers. It is used when testing the strength of authentication mechanisms and doing security assessments. It is executed in Linux terminals, often on Kali Linux or other penetration testing distributions. It helps identify weak passwords and improve security by testing logon credentials across various protocols. It works by attempting multiple username password combinations against a target service using customizable attack parameters. The rest of the how is what this video is all about, so let's get into it. To get started, grab the companion guide from the link in the show notes below. Also, if you like this content, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any new videos. So we have our companion guide and we're all set, ready to go. So as you can see, we have our Kali Linux on the right side. We have our companion guide. A couple of things we need to set up before we move forward. So our prerequisites for the ethical Hydra testing is we need a Linux machine with Hydra, preferably Kali Linux, because it comes with a lot of these penetration testing tools pre-installed. We also need a target system. This is going to be our Ubuntu machine. So we have our Ubuntu machine here. Let's get that out of screensaver mode. So we have Ubuntu here, and our diagram setup looks very similar to this, right? So we have our Kali Linux penetration testing tool, which is offensive security, sometimes abbreviated OffSec. We have our target Ubuntu machine, which we're looking at now. So we have that. We also will need an Apache file. So we're going to configure this Ubuntu web server so we can have a web service to attack. Some public service announcements. Use Hydra only in ethical environments such as your own machines or a dedicated test lab like what we have here. If you are new to the channel, look into the show notes where you can actually get instructions on how to install VirtualBox, pfSense, Kali Linux, Ubuntu, and all the other support video or tutorials that we have used up until this point. So we have that, and also you'll see this when we run the Hydra utility. Do not use Hydra for unauthorized activities, including military intelligence or in illegal purposes. Okay, so with that said, we're going to set this up as well, but we need a terminal. So let's go and verify that we have configured our Ubuntu target machine for Hydra testing. I'm going to go to activities here, and I'm just going to go to a terminal, doing it a little bit differently this time. So we're going to go to a terminal session, and it'll open up shortly. We're going to put this into full screen, Control++ to make it a little bit bigger, and we're going to verify the system control status. So I'm just going to system CTL status and just take a quick look on SSH, see if SSH is running. And yes, we see that SSH is running. It's looking fine. We'll also do the same thing with Apache. We want to see if Apache is running because we're going to target or attack these services. So we see that SSH is running. We also see that the Apache web service is running. And when we go back to the browser, I can see that we can get to Apache 2, the default page, by going to the IP address of the Ubuntu machine, which is 172.16.1.102. Okay, so we have the Ubuntu side all set up. We're going to do a little housekeeping on this side here, and then scroll our companion guide over to this script here. So now we need to have the ability to attack a login page, and by default the Apache 2 server is not configured with a login page. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We have created a script. You can download the script directly from the links in the show notes below. It's going to take you to the class exercise files. The one that we're looking for is Apache. So we're going to download the Apache, and it's going to go to a drive, a shared drive space, and then we will get access to the file. Now we see the file here. We'll examine it in a little bit, but right now I want to download it to my computer. So it says it's about 1.4. It says Google Drive can't scan this file for viruses. So we're going to download it, but we're going to verify it differently anyway. So it has been downloaded into our downloads folder. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm going to quit out of this, clear the screen to get onto the top, and I'm going to CD to the downloads folder. So in the downloads folder, I'm going to see the apache.sh, and now I want to compare its hash value. So the expected checksum is this number, this DB568, goes on a little bit. So first and foremost, let's just go ahead and do an MD5 sum against this file. And it's going to show me this number here, and I can take the time to do the comparison, but we're going to use the check feature of MD5 sum. So I'm going to pipe or redirect this to a file called hash.txt. It could be any file that I want. And then I'm going to MD5 sum -c for check, the hash file. And it says it's okay. This is what I'm looking for. I know that this file has been verified. It wasn't corrupted or disturbed by an adversary on path or a man-in-the-middle attack, and also wasn't corrupted during file corruption while it was downloading from the internet. I can also go back here. You see the number to DB. I can also go back to the main website here, the class file, and compare the number visually as well. So I feel comfortable with the file. It's in the downloads folder. We can go ahead and deselect some of these because we have completed these tasks, and that's the value of having the companion guide. And now we want to edit the script to take a quick look at it. So I'm going to clear the screen so you can get a sense of what it's going to do. So I'm going to Nano and Apache, and we're going to take a quick look at this script. Again, we want to verify the files when we download them to our systems, but two, we want to get a sense of what they're doing because this is an open script. So it's going to go out and get an update and upgrade the Ubuntu machine. It's going to install the Apache library for a PHP page so we can log in. We see here that it's going to start Apache and enable it on boot up. This is fantastic. It's also going to create a website or a web page here over with Hydra test. This is where we're going to link into our see that login page. It comes in with a quick little HTML page here. It's going to have a user input so we can log in. Very simple. If a login is successful, we will get the login successful prompt. It's going to echo that to the screen. And if we have a bad password or username combination, it's going to give us invalid credentials. The default password to get into the site is going to be admin passwords 123. And this is how we're going to access the site. So it's going to be Hydra test. So that's what we're going to do here. We'll Control X. There was no need to actually make any modifications. We're going to take a look at the Apache file just so we can see the modifications. By default, when we download a script file, it needs to be executable. We see it's not. So we're going to use the change mode +X. There are tutorials on this in the playlist link in the show notes as well. You can visit the channel to get that information. And we're going to add the executable, and we see the differences here. We now have the executable capabilities here. So fantastic. So now we're going to actually run this script and let it work its magic. So let's go ahead and run the script. Okay, so that took about 20 minutes. If we go down to the screen here, we see that it says admin password is the default password. It says our site is ready at our IP server, Hydra test. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. If we go to the regular homepage of Apache, we see that. But if we go to Hydra test, perfect. We now have a page that we can use to run our brute force attacks. So let's just see if the default password works. Let's see if that works. It's admin and it's password 123. So let's go ahead and do that. And great, we have login successful. So that looks fine. I'm going to go back and just put in a bad username and a bad password. And we see we have invalid credentials. So this is all set up. We're good on the Ubuntu side. Let's do some housekeeping on this side here, and then we'll move over into the Kali Linux because that's our offensive security and that's our machine that we're going to use to target the Ubuntu. So we're leaving Ubuntu. I can leave these screens as is. That's fine. We'll come over to the Kali Linux side and we'll open a terminal on Kali Linux. So I open a terminal here. It's a little bit tiny, so I'm going to do Control plus just to get a little bit bigger, make it easier on our eyes, maybe one more just so we can really see it. And I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm at the desktop because that's where I opened the terminal, but I want to CD to my present working directory. Actually, I want to CD to my home directory. And then I want to do present working directory there, print working directory. I want to go to the home directory. I'm going to do a quick screen here. It looks pretty simple. We're going to create some files here. So I'm going to clear and we're going to echo, and I'm going to take this command, put it into clipboard and move it over and paste it. And let's examine this. This is going to echo these files or these names, this username. So essentially I'm going to create admin, user, no new line, a new line, net test user, and I'm going to pipe all of that into usernames.txt. So let's do that and let's cat usernames and let's see what that looks like. And exactly what we expected. We have admin, root, test user because we need a file to use for usernames. We'll do the same thing with passwords. We want a password list. So I'm going to copy this into clipboard, bring it over to the Kali Linux side and do the same thing. And now we're going to cat passwords and we see we have password 123456, let me in. So we have 3 users and 3 passwords and we're set up with our password list. Now we want to actually run Hydra. So Hydra, as mentioned, is pre-installed on Kali Linux. It's part of the Kali distribution. There are a number of tools, offensive security tools that are already pre-built in Kali. You can learn more about this particular one, Hydra, by following that link, and it's in the companion guide as you could see here. So what we're going to do is see if we have the latest version or updates. And this is technically not necessary, but let me clear the screen so you can see that. And we'll clear the screen. We'll go ahead and we'll go for the upgrade. And it's going to tell us that Hydra is already the newest version, 9.5-3. If we wanted to check the version, we could just do Hydra and just hit enter. We would see the version 9.5. So we look pretty good here. So let's go ahead and get ready to attack our machine. So we're going to the Ubuntu machine as mentioned. So I'm going to nmap and I'm going to do an aggressive scan of the target machine, the Ubuntu machine. I want to do operating system detection, version detection, and any open ports. And we see that took only about a second or 2 seconds. And we have the host is up. We have our port service. So we know SSH is up because we ran it, but we're seeing this from the Kali Linux side. We also see this, the web server is up, port 80 is up, and we see we have Linux 4.15. So this is great. Let's go ahead and also cat the password files as we saw here before. We're going to cat the username files. We see we're all set. Let's bring it up, clear the screen, and now we're going to actually run the attack because we have the Kali Linux all set up. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping here so that way we know that we have checked off all the items on our checklist. And now we're going to do a brute force attack. And let me just copy the command into buffer and then bring it over and then we'll analyze it. So as you can see here, we're going to use the usernames text password. We're also going to use the passwords text file for the passwords. We're going to target the Ubuntu machine and we're going to target the Apache login page and we're going to pass those user credentials and see if it works. So let's go ahead and hit enter and see what happens. It said 0 passwords were found, right? It gives us some information here. It says 9 tasks were done. So let's examine that a little bit. So we're going to cat the usernames text again. We're going to cat the passwords text again. And let's see exactly what happened here. We have the passwords. It's going to reiterate, and I'm going to bring the command back up one more time and purposely put in a bad argument so we can see those iterations, so we can see this a little bit better. So what's happening here is we're using the L means that we're going to use multiple usernames. So we have admin, and it's going to use password 1234, let me in. Then it's going to go root. It's going to go through the password list. Test user is going to go through the password use. So we have 3 users, 3 passwords, 9 iterations, which is why we have the 9 iterations. Okay, but we didn't get what we were looking for. It says in the previous version, there were no passwords, because that's right. We know that the password was actually admin and password 123. So I'm going to clear the screen again, put in the correct command, and we see 0 valid password found. So let's go ahead and change the password list to what we know the correct password is. And in this case here, it was password 123 in this step. So it's admin, password 123. So I'll go back down here so we can go ahead and see that. So we're going to nano the passwords text file, and I'm going to add 123. Control X to get that to exit, save it to buffer. That is now saved into buffer. We can cat the passwords file again just to make sure we see that. And now we're going to run the command again, and we got exactly what we're looking for now. It looks very different. When we didn't have the password in the password list, we have the valid password 0 were found, but now it comes back with a direct hit. It tells us the admin username and this password, and we have 1 valid password found. Once again, this is a very strong utility. I just want to reiterate that you use Hydra only in ethical environments, i.e. in our personal lab test. And also, do not use it for unauthorized activities, right? And do not, as it mentions here, do not point it towards military or secret service organizations or legal purposes. This is important because this is an online attack. We are targeting web servers that may be on the internet, and if they are, you can get into some trouble with this here. Only do this in a personal test lab. Okay, so we changed the password and we repeated the attack, and we see that it worked out well. So this is what it looks like when it gets a hit. Let's use a curl command to use one of our commands that we have used before. I'm going to clear so you can see the screen a little bit better. Copy this curl command, and we're going to see what it looks like when you have a login successful. And again, we can do this in the website, but that's the purpose of using the curl command, is short for command URL. It's going to pass the admin username and the password of 123. It's going to pass it through our target Ubuntu machine, this web URL login page, and if it's successful, it's a post, we're going to get a login successful. Let's purposely put in a bad password. I'm going to put in some gobbledygook, and now we have invalid credentials. So now we see that this is working well. Just wanted to set it up because we're going to use some stronger lists. Obviously, if we have short lists like this, that doesn't really help us. We need something a little bit stronger, or we may use one user like root in a long dictionary to try and break that account. I would be remiss if I didn't mention at this point that this is important, that if you were running a server like this and you were doing some pen testing, that we want stronger passwords. So the mitigation techniques, which we will talk about a little bit more, is to make sure that we change weak passwords to strong ones. These are terrible passwords, right? Password 123, so we would change those. We also would enable multi-factor authentication, so that way the user has to have a knowledge factor, which is a password, and a possession factor, which is some kind of key fob or a phone that has a lock on it, and they have to get a PIN from a multi-factor authentication authenticator or some type of way of retrieving a second factor, which would be the possession factor, something you have. We also can use restrict login attempts, so that way if somebody is trying to do a brute force after 3 or 4 bad password attempts, then we lock the account. And of course, you can use a web application firewall to limit multiple IPs and other type of attacks. slightly outside the scope of this tutorial, but not outside the scope of this class. We will talk about intrusion detection systems and web application firewalls also. So we're going to do a little housekeeping because we ran our attack. We see that it works. What happens when it doesn't? So let's go ahead and do a little bit more, which is we're going to throttle. And by throttle means that I'm going to clear the screen here so you can see the difference. And we're going to bring in the successful one. So we have a successful login here, but we also know that it went through a number of iterations. And I'm going to purposely put in some bad parameters so we can see all the iterations. And each iteration was 3 by 3. We had 3 usernames and 3 passwords. 3 by 3 is 9, and we see all the iterations here. We may want to throttle and do the timing. We can say with the T command, we want 1 login attempt at a time, and we're going to wait 5 seconds between attempts. Now this is just to make the tutorial shorter, but if there is a cool-off period on the website that we're targeting, we want to see if we can throttle this back and only do 1 at a time and wait 5 minutes between each session. So we have the command here. What I really wanted to highlight is that we're using the -T command, which is 1 login attempt at a time, and the -W, wait 5 seconds for each attempt. We hit that and we see that it gives us the valid one, and it went through 1 of 1 target. So that way you can throttle your testing to get that under the radar on your IDS. Now, once again, this is for penetration testing and ethical to see if everything is working correctly on your environments that you manage and you are responsible for. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at one more. We want to take a look at a password spraying attack, which is, let's see if we're going to use 1 username, 1 password against multiple usernames and see if that will work. So this is going to purposely fail, but the point here is to show that we can get really flexible with this. So we can use a password spraying, so that way it's going to be just 1 username. In this case here, it was admin. And we're going to use a common password like let me in, password 123. And it's just going to pass on to the next user, and it's going to exhaust the usernames list. So let's go ahead and see that. And of course, it's going to be 0 found because we know that is not the password. If we changed it to something that we knew, that would be a hit. The point here is this method tries 1 password at a time for all users to reduce the risk of account lockouts. So this is something that I wanted to bring to your attention, that even though we have gone through some mitigation techniques, there are ways around that adversaries could use to do a password spraying attack, which is using the same password with many usernames. And this is what you would do in Hydra to do that. And of course, you would test to see if your systems could detect that so you can harden your own systems. Now, we were using some simple lists when we were working with this here. Let's take a look at some other lists that are a bit stronger. So there's the default password list for Hydra that we could use. It's a command to generate some list. So I'm going to actually run it. If it's your first time running it, you can just use this command. However, I ran it before, so I have to refresh it. So I'm going to clear to get us back on top. I'm going to use the DPL command. It's default password list for Hydra, and we're going to use the refresh command. It's going to go out to OpenSesame, and it has created a default list that I could use. And look how big this list is. It has over 11,000 entries, and it put it into my home directory, homecali.dp. So let's go quickly take a look at that. So I'm doing present working directory. I'm in my home directory, but I also knew that because of the tilde. And I'm going to cd to .dp Hydra. I'm now in that folder, and I can now see this CSV, this comma separated file. So I'm going to just quickly cat that file, see if we can see _full, see what that looks like. And we see that it has a number of options and they're comma separated, making this list a lot more robust than our previous list. So great. So we have that. I'm going to show another list and then we'll go into a brute force attack as well. So in this case here, if we wanted to use that list, we'll do a clear. We could use one of the lists here. I'm going to copy this command, bring it over into from clipboard into the command line. And this is going to say this is a colon separated file. It's a linksys list. We're going to target and let's see what happens. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We know we only have admin and password 123 as that. So it's going through that process. While it's going through that process, I'm going to do some housekeeping and it gives me some possible hits that we could explore for linksys routers. And this looks pretty interesting if we were running linksys service or we were pointing this towards a linksys router. The other thing I'll point out while we have this here is that there are pre-built word lists, and let's first go take a look at the word lists. So we're going to cd to user share word lists. You can see that here, and there are a number of word lists sitting in this directory because we've installed different tools from Kali Linux. Now you can go to GitHub and download your own word list, but a popular one is the RockU file. RockU file has a number of potential passwords. Keep in mind these are passwords that have been found in real password or security breaches. I'm going to suspend that so we don't have to go through the whole thing. Scooby-Doo, we see a lot of similar passwords we've used in previous classes. And we have a John list for John the Ripper. We have Metasploit. So there are a number of lists here. I'm going to pick one up, and this time we're going to attack the SSH server. So we know we're running SSH on this here. It's going to take a while and it's not going to finish. I just want to show you that we have those capabilities and you let this work in a parallelized manner. So the command is as such, getting a much more robust word list. So this time we're going to use Hydra, and now we're not using a username list. We're going after the root account. And instead of calling a password list, we're going to use a word list for Metasploit and Unix passwords. We're going to throttle that one time, and we're 6 times, and we're going to target the SSH. Now this is going to take a long time because it is the Unix passwords. I'm not interested in breaking the SSH. I just want to show you what's capable, that Hydra is not only for web services, it's other protocols as well, SSH being one of them. So as you see here, this specifies the root name. T sets the 6 concurrent attack threads. We're going to let this run. While that's running, we're going to do some housekeeping and start to close this out from a high level. So the big things to think about here is mitigation techniques, which is to mitigate any of these brute force attacks. First and foremost, you want to have multi-factor authentication. You also want to use strong and unique passwords. The passwords that we used were fairly weak. We also want to have account lockouts. After 3, maybe 4 bad password attempts, lock the accounts. You can use fail to ban as one of those utilities to do that. Also, encrypt and secure authentication, which is passwords should not be going out in the clear, where we can pick that up from TCP dump or Wireshark. So we want to encrypt those transport protocols. Rate limiting and throttling, which is how often can users enter into the site. So we can do that on our website. We'll also talk about, again in future classes, this is setting up so we can prepare and test our IDSs and IPSs, but implementing a web application firewall and intrusion detection and prevention systems. And then if we see IP or behavior, bad behavior or anomalous behavior from suspicious IPs making these attempts, we just go ahead and block those at the firewall. And then also we have honeypots and fake responses that throughout our network, we may want to deploy some deception technologies, some honeypots, so that way if people are trying to attack, we get to understand their methods and means so we can fine-tune our intrusion detection systems. So these are some of the mitigation techniques against brute force attacks. You can get a lot more information about Hydra simply by going into Hydra from Kali.org tools Hydra. There were a number of different tools, but this was introducing you to the brute force online attack. And then, of course, I'm going to open a new tab while this continues to run. We'll pick this up in another session. But the idea here is that you can get help. So one of the ways is you can just do Hydra, no command, and you see some of the options that we were looking for. We used the L, we used the P, there was C. So there were a number of options that you can get more familiar with. You can always use the TAC help to get more information, or you can do man Hydra, and that will run the manual. Once again, it's been a pleasure outlining this feature and this service to you. Remember to use it responsibly, especially in an ethical manner on personal test labs and machines that you own and operate, and do not point them at servers you do not operate. So I hope you enjoyed this. I thoroughly enjoyed creating this one for you. Look out for more, and remember to visit for updated software and, of course, updated tutorials coming soon. See you at the next lesson.